As I'm sure some of you saw yesterday, Dave Nader, another YouTuber that I recently collaborated with and was recently on a live stream with, he posted a video talking about two things. The first was the new Dark Condition Fusion monster that's coming out very soon, and the second thing was legacy support in general and how Konami a lot of the times misses the mark. I was a little disappointed because I thought it was going to be a 50-50 split between those two, but actually, in the course of a 9-minute video, it was only the last 2 minutes talking about legacy support in general. So today, I'm going to do basically the opposite of him, just so we get a full scope here. I'm going to talk about legacy support in general for most of this video, and then I'm going to apply the lessons that I'm talking about to the new Rainbow Dragon Fusion monster that was just announced, a card that I feel misses the mark quite a lot. So legacy support, if you don't know what it is, it's basically when an old archetype or old theme gets support in a recent pack. Usually, if done correctly, these cards will modernize that theme or archetype by bringing it up to speed with what the game looks like nowadays. This is especially true for very old decks. I think a good example of a one card that really made a big difference would either be Blaze Accelerator Reload or Madolche Angeli. Both those cards really brought Madolches and Volcanics respectively into maybe not the highest tier of metagame competition, but definitely as a rogue contender. They built on pre-existing strategies within those themes, but made it just a lot more modern. Some other good support that we can talk about, and probably the best example of perfect legacy support, in my opinion, is the 2 waves of different spirit monsters we got. So spirit monsters were used way back when Yu-Gi-Oh! First came out. There were a lot of powerful spirit monsters, actually. Yatagarasu, Tsukiyomi, stuff like that. And even the level 8 spirit monsters were in their own right pretty deadly if you could manage to summon them, packing effects that either discarded your opponent's entire hand or drew you an entire new hand. So those were good, but they weren't really played outside of just one-ofs in combo decks. Yatagarasu was obviously one of the most toxic cards in the game's history, locking down your opponent after you Chaos Emperor Dragoned, and Tsukiyomi was obviously a crucial part of GOAT control. However, spirits for years just kind of fell off the map. That was until Konami gave us in 2 separate packs, Aratama and Nikitama, cards that I recently talked about in my regional top video. But what made Aratama and Nikitama so good is that they built on the pre-existing strategy of spirits. They didn't break the mechanic. They both still had the non-special summon restriction, but Aratama searched whatever spirit you needed, which gave a lot more utility to the one-of spirits that might not be consistent at 3 copies, and Nikitama gave you free draws, which sort of gave you a bonus, especially back when it came out and the game was a lot slower. It gave you a bonus for playing spirit monsters, and even by themselves, Aratama and Nikitama were a pretty good rank 4 engine that also could net you some advantage for it just netted you advantage for choosing to play them, basically, which was cool. Now, I don't think that legacy support has to be search cards, and the reason that I say that is because there's this issue where if you give a deck a search card that's so good that it's better than the cards it's searching, your deck isn't any better in the long run. A good example of this is Cyberdark Cannon and Cyberdark Claw. In all the hours that I spent playing Cyberdarks, one thing I started to notice is that even though Cyberdark Cannon and Claw were searching other cards, the cards they were searching were pretty much trash. As much as I hate to say it, even with, the Cyberdark Horn, Cyberdark Keel, and Cyberdark Edge aren't good without Cyberdark Claw and Cyberdark Cannon, which made this really weird area where even though you were technically playing Cyberdarks, it was almost like the old Cyberdarks were all Garnets, and you only want to draw the new Cyberdarks, which I would say isn't a good example of good legacy support because it doesn't actually make the old deck better. It just gives you better cards that happen to work with the older cards. I know that might not make perfect sense, but I think when you think about it for a second, it'll actually start to make sense. So spirits, they got Aratama and Nikitama. which was good. It brought them up to speed as far as rank 4s went, made them a lot more threatening. Obviously, I got a regional top with them, and they had multiple regional tops throughout that time period. And then flash forward to very recently, spirits who hadn't gotten support for years suddenly got Shino birds, and the Shino birds did basically the same thing. So you couldn't just give you the old just like more level 4 monsters that don't really do anything. So they had to go big, and by going big, they made a whole bunch of new mechanics. So they made, I think, the first wind ritual monsters in the game. They definitely made the first spirit ritual monsters. And by making spirit ritual monsters, it didn't necessarily ruin the old spirit monsters because you still were playing them. It just made them a lot better and sort of made that restriction of not being able to be special summoned go away if you played a dedicated spirit deck. And the reason that you can tell that this was good support or good legacy support was because when Shino Birds came out, you didn't suddenly stop playing Aratama Nikitama. In fact, Aratama Nikitama actually just became even better because the Shino Bird ritual summoning mechanic actually helped them out. Nikitama was great for sending to the graveyard for the ritual summons to get free draws. Aratama was great for searching combo pieces that you needed to do the ritual summons in the first place. And overall, both strategies built on the original spirit idea of bouncing cards back to the hand, although in the case of the Shino Birds, it was a little different because they bounced back to the hand and gave you some tokens, and that was after a ritual summon, not their normal summon or flip face up. However, at the end of the day, Shino Bird spirits, and especially if you've seen the builds that I've posted, still maintain that spirit value. They still bounce back to the hand. They still have great search effects and powerful effects with the high cost that they do bounce back to the hand or the end phase, and that makes them unique enough. It pays homage to the original strategy that spirits were like a decade ago. Now, bad legacy support is something that doesn't really accomplish any of these things. I mentioned the Cyberdark Claw and Cannon, where they're good cards, but they don't necessarily help out the old archetype in a way that the old archetype isn't just like the worst cards in the deck. And then the other bad thing with legacy support, if it's done incorrectly, is that sometimes the legacy support pushes the envelope as far as fan service goes without making it viable. And now, I want to clarify here that I have nothing against playing quote-unquote bad decks. I think many times on my channel, I have posted the best possible build of a bad archetype, and I think that's fun to sort of come up with your own strategies with sort of lesser-known decks and then actually make them semi-viable, at least on a casual level. But there's a step below that, where you're just playing a deck that's just straight out bad and you're just ignoring optimal card choices, even in the context of that deck. Previously, and this will bring us to the card we're going to talk about, the problem with a lot of people's Crystal Beast builds is that mine were pretty controversial at the time because they didn't play Rainbow Dragon or not a lot of Crystal Beast monsters outside of Pegasus and Ruby Carbuncle. I at least had a viable build that you could maybe get some wins with, where the people that were playing 7 Crystal Beast monsters and Rainbow Dragon, they might have had some fun with their friends, and if that's what you're into, go for it. But in general, you would just lose every single round at a tournament you went to, where the builds that I built, while they weren't meta by any means, they were at least able to win some games. So why is the new Rainbow Dragon card so bad? Well, let's take a look. It's a fusion monster, and Konami has been releasing these GX boss monsters. The Armed Dragon one from Chaz, that's a fusion monster, is like even worse than this, surprisingly. I'm not even going to bother talking about it because it's so terrible. But let's talk about this one. So it's a fusion monster. It's called Ultimate Crystal God Rainbow Over Dragon. That's a mouthful. Level 12 Light Dragon Fusion Effect Monster, 4,000 attack, 0 defense. Its materials are 7 Crystal Beast monsters, and it must be special summoned by fusion summon or the following method, and cannot be special summoned other ways. So you'll see the summoning method here, and I'm going to have to explain it because it says you can special summon this card from the extra deck by tributing a level 10 Ultimate Crystal God monster you control. You do not use polymerization. And then also, while it's on the field, once per turn, you can banish 1 Crystal Beast monster in your graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the banished monster's attack until the end of the turn. And then its second effect is a quick effect, which is basically just the original Rainbow Dragon effect, which is you contribute this fusion summon card, returns all cards on the field to the deck, and of course that counts itself, which is super frustrating. I don't know why they keep doing that. It's like this thing's so hard to summon in the first place. Why are you making it even worse? It's just ridiculous. But anyway, so there's a couple key things here that make it not quite as terrible as it could be. The big one is that it takes 7 Crystal Beast monsters, not differently named Crystal Beast monsters. So you actually could theoretically summon this in a regular Crystal Beast deck that's not straight trash, because you don't have to play Amethyst Cat or Tortoise or any of those cards. You can just play Pegasus, Eagle, Topaz Tiger, and Carbuncle, like the 4 best ones. So that's kind of cool. It's also a Dragon Fusion monster, so you can summon it with Dragon's Mirror, which is like semi-viable. Here's the problem, though. So, to clarify, the Ultimate Crystal God monsters you control, you might have not heard Ultimate Crystal God. That's what the OCG uses to describe Dark Rainbow Dragon and Rainbow Dragon. It does not describe Malefic Rainbow Dragon. So, it's just Dark Rainbow Dragon and Rainbow Dragon. I can pretty much say and pretty much guarantee that you cannot actually... I mean, like, if you are summoning those cards, like, this thing's just overkill at that point, because, like, clearly your opponent's just so terrible if you're doing that. I'd say that maybe it makes it kind of, sort of interesting if you just played, like, a non-Crystal Beast deck with just Dark Monsters and Dark Rainbow Dragon, I guess. But even then, like, I think I'd rather just have Dark Rainbow Dragon than this card, but its one effect, which is banishing the Crystal Beast monster, is basically irrelevant. The highest attack gain it can get is 1800, which just isn't enough. I mean, there's not a huge difference between 5,800 and 4,000. They're both going to just kill anything that it attacks, so why does that matter? Second effect, it's cool that it's a quick effect, I'll give you that, and it's cool you don't have to wait a turn like you do with the regular Rainbow Dragon, but overall, why would you go through the trouble of summoning this thing, of boosting its attack points, of building your entire deck around it, only to shuffle it back into the deck like on the next turn? Like, why is that? Why does this not say shuffle all other cards? Like, it wouldn't even be broken or played in anything if it shuffled everything else into the field except itself, but at the very least I could then play it in a casual deck and it could maybe not be complete trash. But this thing is just another card that is flashy and looks cool to super casual players because it has a lot of attack points, a lot of text on it, but in reality is straight garbage. And I'm not sure why they had to make it this bad. I mean, you can make fan service cards that aren't totally this bad. A good example would be the Magnet Warrior fusion monster. It's not necessarily practical to summon it because you need both of the bigger Magnet Warrior guys, but there are some decks dedicated to bringing it out, and it's not like when you summon it, it's actually really good. It's just not super consistent, where this card is not only not super consistent, it's also really bad. And it's disappointing that Konami would give Crystal Beast players this card. Not to mention that we still don't have the Pendulum monsters in the TCG. If we're talking about that, those cards that were released in the OCG version of Secrets of Eternity way back when Cliffworts were reigning supreme, because that was the Cliffwort Monolith set. We still do not have those cards, but yet we're going to probably get this card before we get those ones. And this card doesn't do anything, but the Crystal Beast Pendulum monsters at least are sort of playable. It's just frustrating. These cards like this look cool. They're probably good in the TV show, but it is sort of frustrating that Konami is printing cards that are just binder filler that will never be worth it in any deck, except a super casual level. But there's a point for me personally, and I feel like any average player or better than average player, where the super, super casual decks are actually so there's like this is like an aside the point, and then I'll cut the video, but for super casual players, they love the decks that have just like a million one-ofs and these big flashy monsters, where people like me, while I'm fine playing bad decks that do weird combos, I can't purposely force myself to play a deck that's just utter garbage. And that's like my problem with this card, is that to play this card, your deck has to be so ludicrously bad that it's not even fun to summon it. If I summon this in a super casual match, I know the only reason I did it was because I'm playing someone equally as bad as I am. Where when you when you pull shit off, like a good example is the Sky Scourge Fretful Burning Abyss deck, where that's like really weird, but when you pull it off, you know it's because you've like actually practiced and built a good deck and did the combos correctly, which is a totally different experience than summoning this thing that's garbage. I don't know. It's just, I hate this card so much, but I should probably stop rambling on. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. There are 2 other boss monsters. One that's an ancient gear that's probably the least terrible. One that's based on Armed Dragon level 7 that's probably the most terrible. This one's right in the middle where it's borderline playable, but just bad enough to where I probably won't play it. Anyway, though, I'll see you guys later. Bye.